I have a question for everyone. How many of you have used AI to create something other than, say, a PowerPoint presentation or just an email? How many of you have created products or services using AI? Excellent. How many of you have coded? Excellent. Now, how many of you actually use it for your operations processes? And I'm talking about whole pilot plus. There you go. Plus, it's not a product, it's just an extension bar. And what about when it comes to actually leading your organization? Do you use AI as an advisory service? All right, this is interesting because we're actually seeing the state of play around AI. The majority have a very clear idea of what AI is, what it does for us. We may not understand billion parameter models, understand the fine tuning or the tweaking that goes under the hood, but many of us actually understand the AI actually has, even if we can't always go and quantify it. So what I'm going to talk today is taking this to a business concept. However, some of these things you can actually apply onto your day-to-day lives. All right, so who recognizes this slide? Not the slide per se, but the situation. So I had a really good idea about using AI in your organization, right? Like, oh my God, it's going to change all the things. I've had this conversation with everybody from engineers to board members, from people out in the public who are telling me, don't you think all this stuff around clones is really scary? And someone else saying, I've used AI for emails the other day, finding it fascinating. And here's me thinking, I built some of this stuff. And I'm thinking, we are in such a disparate world in terms of capability, literacy, adaptability, and implementation. But normally what tends to happen is that someone comes in and says, AI is the new thing now, and we have to implement it. We have to leverage it. We have to make it do something, and we have to tell all our customers that we are now ahead of the game. So what happens? The board or some senior exec will actually say, let's go do the thing. We have to make it real. So the next thing you know, someone has invested in a POC, but there's no return on investment, and we talk about scaling. Someone talks about how, oh my goodness, we've gone and done the thing, whatever that might be, how is that going to affect us reputationally? Somebody else said, actually, HR is ahead of the game, but some people in our side jobs aren't actually doing any of it. A personal example is how some of my coders were actually using AI, and I'm thinking, do we have a policy around that? You now then take what you see in the world and you put it into your organization. Who is responsible for all of this? Who is the one calling the shots? Who is actually making the decision? And when it goes wrong, who pays the price? It's funny how I have condensed 15 years into a slide of about 7 bullet points. But this gives you an idea of my arc. I've always had a passion and love for science. And my day-to-day job now is involving being a fractional chief AI officer. I run courses for leaders all the way from enterprise to startups. And the work there is about taking an AI initiative and making it real. Talked about from inspiration to execution. So the language is, we need to use AI. How do we use it right? And how do we make sure that what we actually develop benefits the organization? So we're not spending good money after that. And I have to say, it is something I'm deeply passionate about, not just because I enjoy working with the technology. It's because I love working with the people. And also, a bit of a chaos gremlin. I actually love working with technology, with complexity and solving problems. And I get a buzz from doing that for other people. So what I do now at Cyan, and this is a shout out to some of our transformation gurus as well, is as a 5-year-old girl, I wanted to be an astronaut. Then I realized when you grow up below the poverty line in the northeast of England, no one's sending you to space camp. So I downgraded my dreams to being an astrophysicist. It took a while. And what happens is the world changes, as it always does, over the last, I'm 45, 46. See, now you know where the age is kicking in when you forget your own age. And I'm now feeling like I've come full circle into living the passion, which is bringing the space sector, frontier technology, aerospace, telecommunications together to work with AI and people in solving some of the most cutting edge problems. So let's talk about the governance gap. I'm going to talk about three things that you can actually take away. Now, it's perception, coordination, and adaptation. It's all very Darwinian. So the perception gap, we started talking about there being a problem to solve, and then we decide, let's go do whatever it is we want to do, implement it. And someone says, we've got to do this the right way. And everyone thinks we've got a governance process in place. Just because you've got a little bit of piece of paper, maybe somewhere tucked under a drawer or maybe on the desktop as a snapshot. But do you actually have a process for if something goes wrong? And I will say this, I cut my teeth in cybersecurity. It was one of the first things I did when I went into data science. And the philosophy in cybersecurity is not if, but when. So when things go wrong, do you have a way of holding your organization accountable? Do you have a way where you apologize to your client? Okay, we got it wrong. This is how we solve the problem, because an apology is not worth anything unless there is some form of report. So what I'm trying to say is in between the inspiration to trying to achieve something and saying, we have a vague idea of what we're doing to actually implementing it, that gap is where the problem starts to occur. Coordination. Now, many of you will be running your own businesses. Some of you will have multiple departments. And when the teams don't talk to each other about what they're doing, you then start creating more problems. I alluded to having my own engineer also do this. So when ChatGPT came out a long while ago, I was probably one of many heads of AI who was saying our team actually wants to use a new tool to solve their workflow problems and figure out, okay, how do we move along faster, much more efficient, get the code better. But if it goes wrong, if there's no oversight, if there's no processing, and that's just within the team, one team, it becomes very obvious. Now move that engineering team to then, you've got your sales team, you've got your HR, you've got your technology, you've got the executive. Everyone's got a very different idea of what AI is doing within their organization. And I would not be telling too much if I was to say there are a lot of organizations who have leaders inspiring or being aspired to use AI and not realizing the full extent that AI is already in their organization. People are using it, like we all do, to become informed or learn something new or create something new. And we're taking it back to work. How does that actually work when it comes to something that's actually shippable or deployed? And it does happen. Finally, the adaptation gap. We're all trying to get ahead of the game. AI has turned us all into survivalists at this point. It's like, if we're not doing it, somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else is going to do it faster and quicker. As someone who's been a thought leader in the game for about 15 years, I will even say now, I can't tell you what's going to happen in 3 months, let alone 3 years. We're all trying to be truth seekers. We're all trying to read into the crystal ball and trying to figure out what's going to happen. There is an answer to this. We should be looking to lead with AI, not led by AI. And I think that's one of the things I'm starting to see. Everybody wants to be an AI leader. You don't serve the technology. As someone who's helped build the technology, you don't serve the technology. Technology serves you. Okay, so what AI reveals under pressure? I've got 5 things here, and yes, of course, they're going to have their corresponding solutions on the other slide. Unclear decision ownership. We've already touched this. We've already talked about engineers using it for code, but we've also got marketeers who use it for copy. Who has been on their LinkedIn and thought everyone sounds exactly the same? So people are starting to use AI by default. It's the fastest way to do stuff, figured out how to do something really quickly, but no one has put any intention around how AI is used in an organization. For 2.5 years, I ran the UK business for AI at Microsoft. And we'd go into organizations and say, this is how you solve your problem with our product, as every product company does. What surprised me was how many of these massive enterprises actually had completely different maturity levels throughout their organization. I remember walking into a very well pharmaceutical companies to find out that they were cautious in using AI in the labs for quality control. But the HR had already been using it for over a year to look at CVs and for candidate analysis. And so many of the senior leadership were not aware of that disparity. How do you then quantify what the return on investment is in AI when you have that kind of mismatch? We are now moving in a way where the technology keeps moving fast and everyone keeps thinking we need to have the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. You don't need to have the next thing. It is incredibly noisy out there, but how do you pay attention to what will actually matter? That's a very difficult thing to do. And we'll come back to what we talked about quite often, which is what business problem are you trying to solve? I think one of the things that has become very interesting in the democratization of AI. So back in 2013, when I fully came into the game, I was one of the big proponents of saying we need to have access to this for as many people as possible. This is how we level the playing field for capability. And one of the things you start seeing, it's becoming very visible now to the general public. Models change and evolve. Some things are great, some things not so great. Now imagine what that pace can actually look like at an enterprise or a business level. It actually goes much quicker and the impact is even bigger. Because then you develop a workflow and you have to then think about, okay, how do I retrofit this, or how do I make this more resilient so the next upgrade doesn't impact my operations? On a very personal level, Sire is an AI-first company because I use AI for the build. I'm developing a technology platform. So while on a day-to-day basis, I'm advising board members and I'm working as a fractional Chief AI Officer, I also do nerd out as well and do a little bit of coding myself. When models change and flip, when I look at how many basically tokens I burn and the efficiencies of model and look at the cost of all of that, and I think to myself, okay, if I can't become reliant on any one thing. I've got to figure out, okay, what can work if this changes again? And then finally, so we have touched on agentic AI, and this week alone has been very interesting, where I've actually had a couple of companies come to me and say, we're thinking about developing agentic AI systems that incorporate sensitive information from individuals. And all I can think was, that's the kind of thing that makes a senior executive think, oh, this is interesting, a new direction for the company. And then a lawyer say, oh, it seems that we're going to be on retainer for a little longer. Because when you combine the other bits that we just talked about, your team not able to keep up and not communicating, initiatives being fragmented, no one owns the decision. Guess who's at the front line when things go wrong? It's your audience. So authority, who decides who owns the risk, who approves, who escalates? Now, I know there was a conversation earlier on about the C-suites evolving and changing over the course of time. And everyone thinks, this is from a personal perspective, just like your CDO, just like your CISO, just like a CFO knows that there's a responsibility for the new organization, there are people who are willing to step forward and say, look, we need to take responsibility for this. Because unlike your spreadsheets, which are a record of the past, when you are implementing AI, you're trying to predict what your operations look like in the future and how you implement solutions. It affects everything, not just across new services, but your culture. It does mean sitting down and saying, what does the AI mean for us as an organization? And I'm going to say this as well. You don't always need to have AI as a solution for what you're trying to solve. What is the business problem? What is the simplest way to solve it? Does AI even need to actually be involved in the process? For some people, it's not. It's just the fact that they feel that they must have it. Visibility. So to solve the other problems we talked about, we need a little bit of an authority, chosen someone to be responsible, or groups of. Visibility, what leaders can actually see across tools, models, and data flows, etc. You cannot govern what you cannot see clearly. Now, this cannot be done by AI. This is where the human collaboration, communication, and networking comes in. This is where the different departments of an organization sit down together and say, this is what we're actually doing. Because the majority of the problems we face around AI are happening because we haven't communicated to each other what our intentions are, what the remit is, and how things are being implemented. If we were to sit down, you just need one person to say, should we be doing that? Is that really the right way to go about it? And what do we do if it goes wrong? That is basically a us thing, not an AI thing, a human thing. Boundaries. Now, personal life, professional life, AI, you need boundaries. What is permitted, prohibited, reviewed, escalated. Because without these clear edges, best codes of practice, let's just say, things bleed into each other. And when things bleed into each other, it means you don't have oversight, and then you call a lawyer. Capability. Now, this is down to AI literacy. And a lot of the work I do, which is interesting to me, still is the same conversation I had 15 years ago. What can AI do for our organization? How do we implement it? And how do we solve the particular business problems we have in mind? And how do we educate our users? What level of understanding do they actually need? Not everybody needs to know how to build models. Not everyone needs to know how to code, but having an intuitive understanding of the strength and limitations of AI, absolutely. And remember the last thing about proactivity, keeping ahead is not about being good at every piece of technology. It's about watching the news and seeing what works and what doesn't. And you will see there is actually a general trend for when you're reading your morning news, whatever platform you have it on, and where AI goes wrong. And it tends to fall in the lack of readiness, the lack of education, the moving too fast without considering decisions. Proactivity isn't just sitting there and having, maybe we'll do a little bit of this and anticipate a little bit of that. It's looking at the pattern of what works and what doesn't work and thinking, okay, how does this apply to our organization? And then thinking in terms of something that's very important, which is your reputation. Everybody is in a rush to apply AI so that you can get to the bottom line, right? Make it all profitable. But there's one thing that you can never get back once you've lost, and that's your reputation, your trust and your integrity. Because you can always make more money. But for a lot of organizations, they can look at the big orgs with the deep pockets of long arms, and they mess up with AI. They can absorb the legal ramifications and the reputational ones. But for a lot of businesses, you messed up. That's the difference between you operating and losing people and or out of the game. And your competition, who's taken a considered approach just for the minute, will do it better than you. So finally, survival now depends on governance intelligence. Got to have the boss and everything. I said that the organizations that survive in the next 12 to 36 months will be those who can experiment with accountability, coordinate with transparency, and anticipate the change and respond as a unit. And we come back to the whole thing again. It's not just about AI, but who we are as people, how we talk to each other, how we communicate, govern, and lead. The technology will evolve. It's constantly evolving. I literally just said, I can't tell you what's going to happen in 3 months, let alone 3 years. But what we can do is take a breath and just say, okay, if we are going to do this, should we do this? And if we do this, how are we going to do this? And we do this together. So that's me. I just want to leave you with a QR code to my website. You'll see my Substack and podcast, the Chief AI Officer executive course as well. And if you're interested, let me know. We'll go through an alignment process, some questions, see if it's a fit. But what I want to say is that it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to all of you and learning from all of you. And I am happy to serve. Thank you so much.